Now, on Radio 4, the writer Ian Sansom attempts to adapt the unadaptable as he's set the task of producing Against the Clock, a modern version of William Langland's famous medieval dream poem, in Piers Plowman Revisited.
Dream, dream, dream. If all literature is really a form of dream work, then perhaps all dreams are really true stories. Hello?
Hello, Ian?
Yep.
It's Connor Garrett here from the BBC.
Oh, right, yes, Connor. How are you, mate?
Sorry, is this a good time?
Yeah, I was just having a little nap.
Sorry to bother, but I wanted to get in touch to let you know that your proposal about Piers Plowman has been commissioned, so good news.
Oh, really? Oh, well, that's great. Good. I'm delighted.
Good news. My proposal for a programme about Piers the Plowman, a programme in which I attempt to adapt one of the most cryptic and strange poems in the English language. Which is presumably why nobody has ever attempted a radio adaptation before.
So what's it about?
Well, basically...
It's about, there's this dreamer who's called Will, this sort of dreamer figure, and he falls asleep in a field, and when he falls asleep he has a dream. And then he wakes up again, and then he has another dream.
Ac on y mai morwenning, on malfa na hilles, me befell a ferli, of fire me thochte. He was weary 400, and went to me to rest under a broad bank, be a born seed.
I think we're going to have to try and find an angle on this, a way into the story somehow. It sounds really complicated.
An angle?
Yeah, I'm not sure we can do a straight programme about a 14th century dream poem, basically. So look, I've come up with a plan.
Right. And what is it, Connor, exactly?
If anyone could do it, Ian, you can do it. I mean...
This is the plan. I get locked in a tower in the glens of Antrim with a bunch of poets and work on my adaptation of Piers the Plowman over the course of a weekend, at the end of which I'm supposed to put on a performance. It's one way of doing things.
Ready for this?
I'm as ready as I'm ever going to be.
Hello. Hello.
What is this place? It's the Curfew Tower in Cushendall, of course, owned by Bill Drummond, artist, writer and provocateur, and probably most famous for burning £1 million of his own money.
Since 1999, he's been letting vagabonds and artists, I guess, stay in it for free.
And that's you?
We're 3 of those vagabonds.
Drummond apparently used to spend his summers as a child round here, and when the tower came up for sale a few years ago, he bought it, restored it, and he now runs it, alas, as an artist's residency. Those words in themselves make your heart sink. Right, yeah, cheers. Thank you for having us. Here's to Piers Plowman. It turns out to be a busy place, this isolated tower. As well as the 3 young poets, Manuela, Caitlin and Stephen, there's also my old friend, the renowned medievalist Stephen Kelly, staying here.
So how's it going, you daft dolt?
It's, I've got a few notes.
Right.
And I'll maybe talk you through a few of my ideas. If anyone can help me with my adaptation of Piers the Plowman, I suppose it's him.
The poem is perhaps one of the most complex works in the English tradition. There are nominally 3 versions of it, written between the 1360s and the 1390s.
These 3 versions, I'm right in saying, are imaginatively titled the A text, the B text, and the C text.
We are exciting people, medieval textual scholars. Yes. The narrator of this poem is called Will, but that person is presumably the author, but it's also the faculty of Will.
Right, because during the course of all of the poem, he meets all of these other faculties, doesn't he, as it were? So he meets intelligence.
Yeah, imaginative is a good one. He encounters the imagination.
I am imaginative, quod he. Idel was he never. Doch he sitter by myself, in sickness nor in health. He have a full day in faith, this 45 winter. And many teams have maved thee to mean on thine end.
Right, okay. Where shall we start? Pen? Notebook. Piers the Plowman.
The problem with the shape of this poem is that a lot of the structuring aspects of this text have been added by scribes. So what we traditionally do in the B version of the poem is that we read from the prologue to passages 7, we read as the visio, the vision, and from passages 8 to passages 20 we see a vita. And really what we see at the beginning of passage 8 is the poem starting again. One of the great frustrations of this poem for readers is that it never finishes anything. Episodes are introduced, questions are asked, but they're never really resolved.
Oh, man.
So the dominant genre of this poem, I suppose, is dream vision. And dream vision allows poets in the Middle Ages to say things about society that they normally wouldn't be able to say. And one of the real thrills of this poem for readers is realizing that the kinds of questions one asks of one's own dreams, what the hell did that mean, is precisely what this poet is interested in forcing us to do. So a good example is, I suppose, at the opening of the poem, Will gives us a survey of that fair field full of folk, and he tells us that there's a tower on the top and a deep dale beneath. So it's a world caught between a tower of truth and the dungeon of hell.
Ac as he beheld into the east, and height to the sun, he sech a tour on a tuft, trailich I market, a deep dale beneath, a dungeon therein, with deep ditches and derk, and dreadful of sichte.
Did I mention the dungeon?
Wow, it's tiny.
So the person who lived here rang the bell when it was time for everyone to go to bed, and if they caught anyone out in the streets, then they would get them in, put them in this dungeon.
Well, that sounds like an excellent idea.
So, if we're going up the first flight of stairs,
Langland, and certainly his narrator, are the kinds of people you bump into in Hyde Park. They're on their soapboxes.
Right,
And
okay.
they're telling us things are going to hell.
Oh, so maybe, yeah, okay. Lord Soper,
Yeah.
kind of figure who is possessed with a sense that they have some profound knowledge that they need to impart in as urgent a fashion as possible.
Absolutely.
Once I've worked out which one I'm going to do, that'll be absolutely. And they're all divided into sections, so what you call passus, which is, it's Latin. Oh, what am I doing? What am I going to do?
And the real issue for Langland is that because the institutions of society are so corrupt, the path to salvation itself is being obscured and blocked.
Obscured and blocked.
And so one of the things the poem explores in that vision of the Fairfield full of folk is the kind of contrast between the corrupt merchants and friars and those who work like an idealized ploughman. And the ploughman becomes the central figure of the poem, of course. Later on, the ploughman disappears, and we enter into a kind of journey of the soul in the second part of the poem, where Will goes in search of do better, and do best.
Yeah.
How are you getting on?
I've made a little bit of progress.
Oh, really?
Although the probability of me being able to adapt a medieval dream poem is maybe not as high as one would like.
And do bet in many respects is a kind of renovation of the soul. How do I, as an individual, contribute to this society usefully? That becomes a great concern in both the B and C versions of this poem. Is poetry a legitimate form of work? Is art making a contribution? And then do bet and do best concern the ideal figure of Christ himself and the reformation of the church.
What this mountain bemeneth, and the mercadale, and the feld full of folk, he shall your fair show.
This exact bell is actually from an East London fire station originally.
It's from an East London fire station, and it's now here at the top of a tower in Cushendall. So if I'm looking there...
You're looking at Scotland.
Right, okay. So that's Scotland.
And behind us, we've got the Lurag Mountain.
There's the big lump of mountain, and there's the sea. So we're between the mountain and the sea, in a tower above a dungeon. If you were going to stage a medieval dream poem, this is probably, in fairness, not a bad place to do it. Although I feel that the view of the golf course maybe spoils it a little.
At the beginning of the poem, the very first passus, he tells the reader that he's going to explain what he's just seen in his dream. And suddenly a woman in a beautiful gown comes down from a mountain, and he asks her what it means. It turns out she is Lady Holy Church.
Good person to ask.
Indeed.
A mervelous metals met me then, for he was ravished richt there, for fortuna me fette, and into the land of longing and love she me brought, and in a mirror that hichte middle earth she made me to behold.
But what emerges throughout that passage and the next is that will and Holy Church exist in different language worlds. So the language that Holy Church uses is full of scholastic theology, it's full of biblical reference, whereas Will's is the perspective of someone who doesn't understand.
Oh, good grief. Maybe you need to get some help. You need to ring someone and get some help. I could ring Brian Sibley. He's one of the world's great authorities on radio adaptations.
You couldn't find anything harder then?
No. So, not being funny, is there some kind of secret to doing a really good adaptation of a difficult piece of work?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's several things you've got to think about to start with. I mean, are you going to tell it historically in the context in which it was originally written, or are you just going to take the imaginative leap and say, here's a story about all kinds of things? It's an allegory, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you know, I think I'm probably going to take an imaginative leap and hope that people leap with me. I think is my...
Well, then the best bit of advice I can give you, if you're going to do that, I think, is to try and work out who is your central character, who's telling the story, and how are they going to tell it to us. Are you going to focus on the character of Piers the Plowman, who, if I remember right, he doesn't turn up at the beginning of the story at all, but sort of comes in and then drops off the radar?
Yes, Piers the Plowman is a bit of a problem because he, as you say, he doesn't come in until late, and then he makes a few kind of cameo appearances, and then he turns into the Good Samaritan, and then he seems to be, the Christ figure himself.
Crucifuge, quod a catchapo. He warn't him a witch. Tolla, quod another, and talk of cane of thorns, and began of grain of thorn a garland to make, and set its sore on his head.
So to say that he's a little bit tricky to deal with would be an understatement.
Well, I think the interesting thing about Langland as the character, as far as anybody knows anything much about him, is that there's at least 3 versions, possibly more. I mean, maybe you need somebody out.
Dream payphones.
One critic many years ago described Piers Plowman as a commentary on an unknown text, and that unknown text is typically thought to be the Bible. So I think it's unique to that extent. Its difficulty puts readers off. Its commitment to failure puts people off. We like to be fulfilled when we read texts, especially texts that are about the meaning of life. But constantly this poem postpones any satisfactory interpretation.
Act on a May morning on Malvern Hills, may biffle. What is that word?
Never mind the story and the allegory and the allegorical beings. There is first of all the obvious difficulty of the language itself.
That I was in a wilderness, wista. I never were that I can't do.
You can't translate a poem like this. The poem translates you.
I see a tour on a toft, trilek, marked. A deep delve beneath a dungeon.
Just gone midnight, and all of the poets are still downstairs doing whatever poets do. I don't know, talking about stanzas or something. But I need to get to bed and think about how I'm going to do the adaptation. If I get a good sleep, that maybe. That will help.
And as he lie and lay in it, and locked on the watches. It slumbered into a sleeping. It swayed so moria.
Good morning.
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 How did you sleep?
Thus he walked, and wrote what he had dreamed, and dichted me dearly, and did me to church.
So far, I've done. But it's you know, there's loads of time left, isn't there?
We're putting a poster up for the performance tonight. You are cordially invited to come and hear Ian Sansom perform a new adaptation of Piers Plowman in the garden of the Curfew Tower at 8 on Saturday.
When the sun was soft. Now, does that mean the sun was warm, or does it mean that the sun was not very warm? And when the sun was soft, maybe it's...
Yes.
Well, you could say when the sun was
Ian Sansom.
What time is it?
It's going to be at 8 o'clock tonight.
Oh, 8 o'clock, I see it, yeah, okay.
Do you know about Piers Plowman?
No.
No? No, sorry. It's a medieval dream
You
poem.
wouldn't shook now, would you? What would you do? I shook me. I shocked.
You're cordially invited to come and hear Ian Sansom performance a new adaptation of Piers Plowman tonight. Fantastic. I'm really looking... Oh, yes, I am looking forward to it. I should be here.
I'm not looking forward to it.
This is poetry as hard work. This is poetry as spiritual exploration. I think you've got some sense of that over the past few hours, Ian.
I'm starting to get quite a strong. I'm starting to get quite a strong sense of that. Right.
Okay.
Good.
Well, I'll leave you to it then, Ian, yeah?
I need help. I maybe need to call upon some further assistance. Perhaps my friends from the Wireless Mystery Theatre, Reggie, Aisling, Colin and Barry. They're an inventive sort of bunch.
Elephant.
Maybe too inventive.
And somebody said this was medieval, right? So
yeah.
I can only presume
that's essential.
That there are horses somewhere.
Yeah. Even if there's not, we're going to put them in now.
Yeah, well, people are disappointed if they don't see coconuts.
So, what's possible with a guitar?
Well, we were thinking we need some kind of overture.
Do you have an overture to hand?
I have a tune that occurred to me yesterday, which is very short. I don't know.
It's very simple.
That encapsulates the mood of the piece rather nicely. What about when it gets to the harrowing of hell, though?
The harrowing of hell?
The harrowing of hell.
I put in a minor chord there. Permanent. I don't know if I've much hope for it.
No, I think it's a hefty task.
How would I do it? I don't know. I've had all kinds of thoughts about how I might do it, and every thought I think of, I think, no, that diminishes one aspect of the poem and elevates another. It's a cornucopia of voices, you know? And part of the challenge, I think, is to capture some of those voices. How do we do that? How does Ian do that? I don't know.
To be quite honest, I don't know either.
Thus he robed in russet, he roamed about, alla summer season, for to seek dowell, and frine a full ofte of folke that he mette, if any wicht wiste where dowell was at inne, and what man he michte be, of many men he asked.
Right, so I'm close. No, I'm not close. I'm a long way off. And so I wanted to get just, like a feedback loop thing going. So shall I present you with some ideas? Yeah, this is so. Okay, fine. One possibility is transposing the whole thing into making it into like a Western, right? Because you've got a wilderness. Yeah, you got the tower, which could, like a Dodge City type, the field of folk is a Dodge City type thing.
It's good in the short term, but what's your end game?
The end game. Now, I could do it as end game, because, but funnily enough, I did think quite close to Beckett. They're seeking answers. The answers are always postponed, kind of thing. So,
yeah. We brought all of these sound effects from Belfast. If you want to be back at the mesh of silence, what's the point of us?
It's Ginsberg. It's a Ginsberg.
Ginsberg. This is good.
The howl. That's what this poem is. It's a howl for the 14th century.
So.
And so me wit wakes, and whined till a fool were, and some a lacked me leave, allowed it few. Folk held me a fool, and in that folly, he raved.
It's a cacophonous poem. So it's got to be.
Shut up! Please! I'm going to have to just go and clear my head and see if I can work this out for myself. My head is full, stuffed. It is swimming with all the suggestions and ideas. There's Brian Sibley, and there's all of the medieval contexts, and there's people with instruments, and we're going to try and turn it into some kind of musical. And I have done what Will does in the poem. I've just come down by the river, and I'm just going to sit by the river, just like the dreamer at the start of the poem. Sit down by the riverbank and allow the music and the sound maybe to lead me into a way of doing things. Maybe that's how I'm going to achieve my flow.
Be Christ, quod conscientia though, he wolla become a pilgrim, and welcome as weed as the world lasteth to second Piers the Plowman. Now kinda me avenge, and send me hap and hale till he have a Piers the Plowman.
That's it. I think I've cracked it. Let's go. I think I've cracked it.
I think you have differing lung capacities.
Yeah, I can't really hear.
Let rehearsals commence.
Many bells.
There's always been a resemblance between Ian and the narrator of Piers Plowman. Willful, searching, confused. I think it'll be a fascinating production.
Well, I didn't quite know what to expect coming down, but I think it's come together and taken a shape, and I think it's going to be good.
I think you did a good horse. Oh, yeah. I can do this.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun, no matter what happens. I think leading up to this event has been kind of remarkable, and everyone's gotten along and come together, and it'll be fun. It'll be interesting.
So, we are really close to performance time, and despite our anxiety, perhaps feelings of despair, I think it's appropriate that we sit down and enjoy a medieval feast together. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're having a medieval stew served on trenchers, which is that kind of bready type stuff. How's the medieval stew?
It's delicious.
Thumbs up.
Lovely.
I think this is going to really get us in the mood for a storming medieval dream poem performance. What do you think?
Definitely.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
And so, after a long weekend in the glens of Antrim, attempting to adapt this mad medieval dream poem that has eluded scholars for centuries, I finally achieve my own vision of the vision of Piers the Plowman in the garden of a tower in Cushendall.
In a summer season, when soft was the sun, I shook me into shrouds as I a sheep were. Inhabit as an hermit unholy of works, went wide in this world wondrous to hear.
One summer season when the sun was soft, I shucked on a smock like a sheep, in a habit like a happy-go-lucky hermit, and wandered wide in the world to hear wonders.
So begins what is possibly,
Probably,
definitely,
the strangest, the most complex, and the most frustrating medieval poem in English.
a fair field full of folk found I there between, of all manner of men, the mean and the rich, watching and wondering, as the world asketh.
Or, in modern spelling,
a fair field full of folk found I there between, of all manner of men, the mean and the rich, working and wandering as the world asketh.
this is a book about a dreamer who sets out on a quest to find the truth, to discover the meaning of life, and whose strange encounters along the way amount to the very matter of the book. It is a perturbing and disturbing piece of work. But this is the story as best as I can describe it.
Once upon a time there was a man named Will who fell asleep on a warm summer's day. And while he was asleep, he had a dream.
I saw a field full of folk on a vast plain between the Tower of Heaven and the Dungeon of Hell. They were going about their daily business, the butchers, the bakers, the brewers.
Oh, that's gone. Three ships fair and greener.
But smell well and mackerel, rivers of beef and many a pie.
Hello?
Ian, it's Connor here for the BBC.
All right, how are you, Connor?
I'm great, Ian, but look, I am really concerned we haven't got this sorted. Have you had any thoughts on Piers?
I've done it. I've done Piers Plowman. I went to this tower in the Glens of Antrim, and I was locked in and had to do the poem, and then worked with all these musicians and people and spoke to them.
And sitly he grabbed it after grass, till he got a whack.
Piers the Plowman Revisited was presented by Ian Sansom. Sam West read the text with performances from the Wireless Mystery Theatre. The programme was produced in Belfast by Conor Garrett.